Alrighty. Well, good morning, everybody. It's around 5 o'clock in the morning, 5:30 maybe, somewhere in there. And it is, what day is it? What day is it? It is Thursday, November the 6th, in the year of our Lord, 2025. Yeah. It seems like only 50 years ago it was 1975. It's hard to believe, eh? Anyway, um, yeah. I was just laying here early in the morning thinking of something. And I don't know some of the things I come up with, but I was just thinking of this. Back a few years ago, as most of you know, or maybe all of you know, I'm up here in Canada, so we have our weird government up here. Oh, where would I even begin? Fuck, it's bad. Pardon me, but it is. It's really bad. I know I probably shouldn't use the F word, but it's bad. It's really bad. You'd have to be here to know how bad it really is, but it's bad. And but I was thinking of this thing though, back during the whole scamdemic situation. They were trying to push the COVID shots, wanting to make everybody take a COVID shot. Now, of course, a lot of people just ran to get them. They could hardly wait to get their COVID shot. But there were some of us that were hesitant about it. They called us vaccine hesitant, and we were. We were looking at it and saying, oh, is this thing safe? Like, what? I don't think I trust it. And it turns out we were right not to trust it, because now we're seeing the results with increased cancers, to turbo cancers, and all kinds of weird stuff is happening with the people who took it. But at that time, the Prime Minister was really angry. This was Prime Minister Justin Trudeau at that time. He was really angry with people who would not take these shots. And he went on television and he accused us of all sorts of evil. And he said that we were misogynistic. He said we were racist. All that business because we wouldn't take a COVID shot. Now, what not taking a COVID shot would have to do with either of those things, I don't know, but that's what he said. He also said that we were anti-science. He said these people are anti-science, and then he went and made all the other accusations. Now, here's the interesting thing, though. The man who called us anti-science, those of us who rejected the COVID shots, he said, you're anti-science. These people are anti-science. He also used the royal we, because he said it causes we as a leader, like that causes we as a leader to wonder, in all this business. And it causes we to this and that. So he was using the royal we anyway. I can't quote him directly now, but he was using the royal we. So he was regarding himself as a king, basically, as opposed to an elected politician. Anyway, here's the thing though about it. This man accused us of rejecting science. What I find interesting about that is this is the same man who totally has rejected reproductive science. In washrooms in government buildings, because of his government, we have feminine hygiene products in the men's room, because apparently men get periods. Once a month, all us men, we get a menstrual period. And so we need these feminine hygiene supplies in the washrooms, so that we can change our tampon, our pad, or whatever because we have our period, when we get our period. This is the same government and the same prime minister that has said that a man can be a woman if he identifies as such, or a woman can be a man if she identifies as such. And in fact, a person can be an animal if they identify as such. You could be a kitty cat or a dog or a bunny rabbit or a white-tailed deer or a bull moose if you identify as such. you know. Now, tell me again about rejecting science. The man who has totally rejected science, really. I mean, look, there's a field of science and there's a field of medicine called reproductive science and reproductive medicine. There are specialists in the medical field who do nothing all day but deal with reproduction. There are scientists who do nothing all day but study human reproduction, and and medical doctors who their entire career is dealing with human reproduction. So say if you're a young couple, a young married couple, man and a woman, an actual man and a woman, not people identifying as something or other, but an actual biological born man and a actual biologically born woman. And you're married and you want to start a family. And you've been trying to get a family going, the man has been trying to get his wife pregnant, the wife has been trying to get pregnant, and it just ain't happening. So they say, I think we've got some sort of a problem. There must be something going on with one of us or with both of us that's causing, this not to happen. And so they go to a reproductive clinic, and they deal with a reproductive specialist, a doctor who specializes in human reproduction. And he looks at the man and he looks at the woman, he examines them both. He asks them both questions that are specific to their gender. He may ask the woman, when was your last menstrual period? He doesn't ask the man that, because as a scientist, he knows that the man doesn't have menstrual periods. Yet the prime minister says we do. So, like I say, the prime minister has totally rejected science. And then he accused us, who refused to take these shots, of rejecting science, amongst other things. Now it's turning out that science is proving us right. It's proving that these shots weren't a good idea. But hey, we've rejected science, apparently. See, this is the thing. This is the reason. I have certain people in my life, my mother being one of them, who hates the fact that I'm so rebellious. That I will not just go along with the program. That I will not just be like everyone else. That I will not just unconditionally trust and respect and obey authority, and so on. But the thing is, I have reasons. I mean, look, when these people say such stupid things, I don't think I want to hitch my star to their wagon. I really don't. I mean, why on earth would you ever want to blindly follow somebody who has demonstrated repeatedly that they're a stupid person and that they're a corrupt person? They're not only stupid, they're corrupt. So if they don't mislead you out of just ignorance on their part and stupidity, they'll mislead you out of malice, out of corruption. Why on earth would I just blindly follow these people? I'd have to be insane. Why would I accept anything coming out of the mouth of a man as truth who has repeatedly lied and been proven a liar repeatedly? Who has even gone so far as to reject science and then to turn around and accuse other people of being bad because they reject science. Like, wait a minute. If I'm bad because I reject what you call science, are you not bad? Because you reject science all the time. You tell me as a man that, you're going to put menstrual products there, feminine hygiene products in the washroom because, in case I need them because I might get my period or whatever. It's like, and then you turn around and accuse me of rejecting science because I won't take an experimental mRNA injection. I won't take an experimental gene therapy injection. And so you say I reject science. While you're doing all this other crazy stuff. And you'll notice those products are called feminine hygiene products. They're called that for a reason, you know. I mean, look, um, you know, I did look at it and I say, you got to be kidding me. I'm supposed to just blindly follow this clown. Um, I'm supposed to just be obedient because he's the prime minister. The same thing, I'm supposed to be just obedient to the police. I've seen the police do things that, like I've seen the corruption firsthand, and I've seen them do things that anyone else would be in prison if they did the same thing. And I've seen how corrupt they can be and everything else. I don't trust the police. I really don't. And I have good reason not to. And I do invoke my rights. As a citizen, I have certain human rights, and I do invoke them in my dealings with the police. And that's not being disrespectful, and it's not being rebellious to invoke your human rights. Like when I got stopped in that ride program a couple weeks ago or whatever, and I refused to tell the cop where I was going or where I was coming from. And I had different people criticize me for that when I told the story. Say I was being disrespectful to the police. My mother told me I'm lucky that the police officer didn't haul me out of my truck by my throat, beat the hell out of me, and take me to jail for talking to him like that. Well, here's the thing. I wasn't disrespectful. All I did was invoke my rights as a human being. I don't have to tell the police where I'm going or where I'm coming from. I also don't have to justify my being out and about after dark to a police officer. I also don't have to justify my trip. But why am I on the road? It's none of your business why I'm on the road. I don't have to justify myself to a police officer. And so I don't. That's all. But I didn't say, I'm not telling you, you pig, or something. I didn't do that. F you, you dirty pig. I'm not telling you. That's not what I said. I just said, I'm not going to tell you that. When he asked, well, where is home? I said, I'm not going to tell you that. He said, well, where are you going tonight? I said, I'm not going to tell you that either. I wasn't mean about it. I wasn't insulting. I didn't call him names. I didn't threaten him. I didn't challenge him to a fight. I didn't do any of that. All I did was say, I'm not going to answer these questions. Basically, that's what I did. Years ago, I had a cop come up to my apartment when I lived above the Royal Bank in Perth, and she is a female cop, and she asked me if she could come in and look around in my apartment. And I said, no, you can't. I said, do you have a warrant? She said, no, I don't. And I said, well, no, you can't. And she said, well, that makes us wonder what you do in there. And I said, you can wonder all you want. It's not for me to tell you what you should think or what you should wonder about. But I said, unless you have a warrant, you are not coming into my home. Well, when I told that story, I had people saying, well, if I was her, I would have ran you in. I would have taken you to jail for that if I was her. Okay, well, look, if you were her, you would be in a lot of trouble because if you did that, you know. The reason that she didn't run me into jail was for refusing to let me search her for refusing to let her search my apartment was because she didn't have grounds to. If she had grounds to take me to jail, she would have. But she didn't have grounds to take me to jail because I hadn't broken the law by refusing to allow her to search my apartment. So, and like I say, I don't trust the police. No good can come from letting the police search your apartment. But bad can come from it. Because you don't know. You might have something in there that isn't legal for you to have, even though you think it is. You might also, because you can't know every law, you might also be in a situation, she might drop something on the floor and then pick it up and say, oh, look what I found. A little baggie of dope or something, and say, look what I found. Now how do you prove that it wasn't there when she walked into the apartment? It's just you and her in there. If she drops that on the floor and then picks it up and says, oh, look, I just found a baggie full of dope. What are you going to say? What are you going to do? How are you going to prove that's not yours? It's your word against hers now. They do things like that, The police, people say, oh, how dare you say that about the police? But the police do things like that. And unfortunately, in Canada, we have such a cognitively dissonant population that they turn around and say, well, by invoking your right not to be searched, by not granting permission to search your apartment to that police officer, you are proved that you are a criminal, that you're an immoral person and a criminal, and that you belong in prison because you wouldn't allow the police officer to search your apartment. I've had people tell me that. That's the reason Canada is in the trouble it's in, is because of people like that. The truth is, as much as I dislike the government and I mistrust them, and as much as I dislike the police and mistrust them, I don't blame them. If we have a population of milksops who's afraid to stand up, I don't blame them for abusing us. Really, I don't. Why shouldn't they? They're going to get away with it. In fact, most of the population supports them when they abuse other people. When I'm being abused, most of the population supports them in their abuse of me. And if I was like most of the population, which I'm not, I don't fit in here at all, and that's one of the reasons. But if I was like most of the population, I'd support them while they abused you. But I'm really not, so, it doesn't really apply in my case because I don't support them while they abuse you. Even though I know, and most of the time, you will support them while they abuse me. because if you're a Canadian, because that's how most Canadians are. But anyway, see, I see the contradictions though, and it just heightens my mistrust of these authority figures. I mean, when the Prime Minister at the time, we have another Prime Minister now who's just as bad or worse than the one we had then. Mark Carney is absolutely horrible. But when the Prime Minister at that time, Justin Trudeau, went on television and accused those of us who refused to take those shots of being science deniers, well, he has completely rejected science, you know. At least he's rejected the field of human reproductive science. You know, what's he done? He's basically rejected the field of human reproductive science because it doesn't mesh with his political ideology. That's what it boils down to. So no, I don't trust the Prime Minister. I don't trust the government. I don't trust the police, who are the hired muscle of the government. I don't trust any of them, and I have good reason not to. And I have a right not to. And I have a right not to incriminate myself. I have a right not to place myself in a location by answering police questions. It's like I said before, let's say that night I told the cop where I was coming from, specifically where I was coming from. He would then know what highway I traveled on to get into town. And he would know where I am, where I'm living, where I'm staying. That means that anything that might have happened on that stretch of road between where I'm staying and the town of Smith Falls, I'm now a suspect if any crimes occurred that night on that stretch of road, because I've now placed myself on that stretch of road that night. So let's say somebody's found in a ditch. In the morning, somebody's found in a ditch. They've been run over. It was a hit and run. Somebody ran them over and just kept going. Guess what? I'm now a suspect. Automatically, I'm a suspect because I admitted to a police officer that I was on that stretch of road. See, this is why you don't answer police questions. This is why you have a human right not to answer police questions. You know, in countries like Japan, where they talk about being such an orderly and polite society and everything, in a country like that, the police actually have a right to extract a confession from you by any means necessary in their judgment. They can literally torture a confession out of you. This is something that isn't widely known, but it's the truth. If you look into it, you'll find out it's the truth. There are people on death row in Japan right now who are there on the basis of confessions that were tortured out of them by the police. See, that's what comes of not having rights. There's people in prison in Japan, not on death row, but in prison. The same thing. Confessions that were tortured out of them by police. In Japan, they have like a 99% conviction rate. Because of that. It's a very efficient system. But the problem is they catch a lot of people who shouldn't be caught. There's a lot of people end up serving time and even being hung, being executed, who shouldn't be. So I mean, it's a, you know, is that really what we want here? that the police have carte blanche to do as they please. And if they say you're guilty, you're guilty. And they have a right to subject you to whatever they decide they need to subject you to get a confession out of you. And then you will be convicted on the basis of that confession, even if there's no other evidence against you. Is that really what we want to be doing here? Because we're moving more and more in that direction all the time. And it actually isn't the fault of the police, and it isn't the fault of the politicians. As much as they are guilty for it, it isn't their fault. It's the fault of the population for going along with it and for accepting it. And for even giving it some, pardon me, even for attributing some sort of virtue to it and villainizing those who don't go along with it. I mean, we're moving more and more in a bad direction here, and it's because the people are allowing it to happen. Look, I expect corrupt authority figures to be corrupt. You know, a dog's going to bark, a cat's going to meow, a horse is going to whinny. You know, it's like my dad used to say when he was talking about somebody who was an ignoramus, basically. He would say, what can you expect from a pig but a grunt? You know, well, what can you expect from corrupt authority figures but corruption? So in a way, I don't blame them. Why shouldn't a corrupt person be corrupt when they are given carte blanche to be corrupt? And it's the people who are giving them that. And that's the issue I have. When you're considered an immoral person because you don't answer the questions of the police, because you don't put yourself in a certain location at a certain time so you can be blamed for something later or whatever. Because that can happen, and it has happened to people. There are people sitting in jail now for no other reason than because they answered what seemed like a perfectly innocent question from a police officer. You know, in this country, we have people in jail because they did that. And some of those people aren't guilty. But it doesn't matter. They're in jail because they put themselves in a place or whatever. They admitted that they were somewhere where something happened. So, like I say, it can't ever help you to answer questions. It can only hurt you. And if you're arrested, the police are actually required to tell you that. Now, obviously, if you're willing to talk to them, they're willing to listen. And they can't be blamed for that. And anything you say, they're going to be looking at how they can use it against you. They're not looking at how they can use it to help you. They're looking at how they can use it against you. Which, again, I don't blame them for that. See, it's up to you, though, not to be an idiot and talk when you shouldn't be talking. It's as simple as that. You got to know when to shut your mouth. So, like I say, but in Canada, you're considered an immoral person if you do that. How dare you disrespect the officer by not answering his questions? It isn't a matter of disrespect. You know, it's like anything else. Look, you go into the bank looking for a loan. You want to buy a new car. So you go into the bank, you tell them, I want to buy a new car, I'm looking to get a loan. You don't meet any of the criteria to get a loan, so they reject you. Are they being disrespectful? No, they're not disrespecting you. If you meet the criteria, they'll loan you the money. You don't meet the criteria. That's not just disrespect, that's just how it is, you know? I mean, You know, you go into a restaurant, let's say you're hungry and you have no money, and you go into a restaurant and you say, I'm hungry and I have no money. Would you mind feeding me? You know, I can't pay you, but would you mind feeding me? Well, they have to make a decision then. Are they going to feed you, or are they going to tell you to hit the bricks? You know, come back when you got money. We don't feed people here. We're not a soup kitchen. We don't feed people for free. We're not a soup kitchen. We're running a business. They have the right to do that. Now, I mean, I think if you have a heart, you'll feed the guy, but they're not required to. You know, I mean, if they say, look, there's a soup kitchen, you know, 3 blocks over and down that side street there, go over there and get a meal. Like, they'll help you out. But, you know, we only feed people who can pay us here. They have a right to do that. That doesn't mean they're disrespecting you. It just means they're invoking their right not to feed you for free. If they feed you for free, they're doing it out of the goodness of their heart, not because they have to. You know, and refusing to feed you for free is not an act of disrespect. They have a right to do that. You know, like I say, if you have a heart, you'll feed a guy. But still, they have a right not to. That isn't disrespect. That's just them invoking their right not to give away food for free from their business. So, like I say, that's not disrespect. That's just them invoking their right to make a decision, and them making a decision that you don't necessarily like. It's not a decision that favors you. So it's the same sort of a thing. I mean, in the world, we have to be prepared sometimes to make decisions that are not in favor of the other person in order to preserve ourselves. We have to do that. And yeah, I'm always going to make a decision to preserve my own well-being over making a decision to be deferential to authority. If I have any reason at all to believe that being deferential to authority is going to compromise my position, I'm going to choose to protect myself and to not compromise my position. And like I say, when I see these idiots on television who deny science while accusing me of being a science denier because I won't take an experimental gene therapy injection, I have good reason not to cooperate. I have good reason not to just go along with the program. Anyway, that's it. Rocky's sleeping over here somewhere. I don't know if you can see him or not, but he's over there anyway. He's having a sleep on top of the tote there with his coat on it. He has his own coat, you know, and everything. Quite a cat. It's an old kid's coat that I found in my truck after I bought my truck. It was left in there, and I gave it to Rocky, and he uses it as a comforter, basically. He lays on it to sleep. Anyway, that's it for now. We'll see you later. Hope you're having a good morning so far. Bye for now.